The history of lying and why we're so good at it. Lying is one of the oldest human arts, older than writing, older than religion, older, perhaps, than spoken language itself. Before we could tell stories around fires, we were already bending truth to our advantage. You could say lying is the original social technology, the first software upgrade our species ever invented. It's how we built alliances, avoided punishment, seduced partners, protected ourselves, and, ironically, how we learned to trust one another. Because where there's a lie, there must also be someone willing to believe it. But let's start with a confession. Every single person listening to this has lied. Today, maybe not a grand betrayal or a Shakespearean deceit, but a little one. You said, "I'm fine," when you weren't. You told a coworker, "I love that idea," when you didn't. You complimented a friend's cooking, even though it tasted like sadness in liquid form. We lie to survive social life. Total honesty would be unbearable. If everyone said what they actually thought all the time, civilization would implode by lunchtime. Lying, at its core, is an evolutionary miracle. Animals do it too, though not with our flair for drama. Certain fish play dead to escape predators. Birds fake injuries to lure enemies away from nests. Even plants use deception. Some flowers mimic the scent of female insects to trick males into pollinating them. But humans took lying and turned it into an art form. We learned not only to deceive others but to deceive ourselves, which is perhaps the highest, or lowest, achievement of evolution. Let's rewind to our ancestors. Imagine early humans, small bands on the African savanna, vulnerable to predators and rival tribes. Communication was survival. A false alarm about a lion might cause panic, but it could also divert attention while someone stole extra food. Deception had benefits. It created hierarchy and strategy. Anthropologists believe that as language evolved, so did lying. The ability to manipulate information to say one thing while meaning another was a sign of intelligence. In a way, lying helped build the human brain. Even our faces evolved for it. The whites of our eyes, the sclera, make it easier for others to see where we're looking. That's great for cooperation but also perfect for manipulation. We can feign interest, show false fear, or direct attention with just a glance. Lying is written into our biology. Now fast forward to ancient civilizations. The first recorded lies show up in myth and scripture. The serpent in the Garden of Eden is a liar. Odysseus, the clever hero of Greek myth, survives by deception, tricking gods and monsters alike. In ancient China, Sun Tzu's Art of War declared that all warfare is based on deception. From the start, lying was not just a sin, it was a skill. And society admired those who did it well, as long as it served the tribe. That's the paradox. We condemn lying but reward it constantly. We punish liars in court but elect them to office. We say we want honesty in relationships, but when our partner asks, "Do I look good in this?" we know there's only one correct answer. Truth is sacred but lies are social grease. Religions tried to solve this tension by making honesty a virtue. The Ten Commandments forbid bearing false witness. Buddhism values right speech. The Quran warns against deceit. And yet, even in sacred texts, lying is sometimes allowed. Rahab in the Bible lies to protect Hebrew spies and is praised for it. Hindu epics celebrate clever tricksters. It seems the divine itself understands what we do instinctively. Sometimes a lie saves more than it harms. Of course, not all lies are noble. History drips with deceit that destroyed lives. Empires have lied their way into wars. Churches have lied to preserve power. Scientists have faked data. Artists have forged masterpieces. Lovers have whispered promises they never meant to keep. The power of lying is its flexibility. It can build or burn, depending on who wields it. Let's talk about one of humanity's favorite kinds of lies, the noble lie. Plato introduced this concept in the Republic. He suggested that leaders might need to lie to the public for the greater good to preserve harmony or prevent chaos. You might not like it, but society runs on noble lies. Money, for example, is a collective fiction. A dollar bill is just paper, but we all agree it represents value. Nations, borders, laws, all constructed lies we collectively choose to believe. Civilization itself is a beautifully organized deception. Even science relies on simplified lies. We teach children that atoms look like tiny solar systems with electrons orbiting neatly. That's not accurate, but it's useful. It's a lie told for understanding's sake. Physicists call them models. The rest of us just call them good enough. Lying, then, isn't always malicious, it's often educational. Politics, of course, is lying with a megaphone. From ancient kings to modern presidents, leadership has always involved managing perception. Pharaohs claimed divine lineage. Medieval monarchs said their rule came from God. In modern times, politicians promise change, unity, or a better future, often with little evidence. Democracy doesn't eliminate lying. It democratizes it. Everyone gets to pick the liar they like best. But lying isn't just public, it's intimate. Think of relationships. We say I'll always love you, even though statistically, that's unlikely. We say I forgive you, when part of us still holds a grudge. We say it's fine, when it's absolutely not. These lies aren't cruelty, they're emotional diplomacy. Truth can be blunt, even brutal. Lying is how we protect each other from the full weight of honesty. Psychologists categorize lies into two main types: self-serving and altruistic. Self-serving lies help the liar avoiding punishment, gaining advantage, saving face. Altruistic lies help others, sparing feelings, offering comfort, protecting from harm. Both kinds are essential. A world without altruistic lies would be unbearable. Imagine doctors telling patients, "You'll die painfully in 3 weeks." Imagine parents saying, "Santa isn't real," when the kid is 4. Truth can enlighten, but it can also crush. Lies are emotional shock absorbers. And yet, the line between compassion and manipulation is thin. History is full of leaders who justify their deceit for the greater good. Propaganda works by disguising lies as patriotism. Advertising works by flattering our insecurities. Religion, politics, love, all masterclasses in creative deception. The question isn't whether lying exists, it's who benefits. What's fascinating is how we detect lies or fail to. People think they can spot liars by shifty eyes or nervous tics. Studies show that's nonsense. The best liars maintain calm, steady eye contact. They use emotion convincingly. We don't catch lies because we don't want to. Belief feels better than doubt. A comforting lie is more seductive than a painful truth. Modern life has amplified this instinct. Social media is the global stage for performance lies. Every profile picture, every caption, every living my best life post curated deception. We project ideal versions of ourselves because reality feels too messy. The irony is, everyone's lying at once, and everyone knows it. But the illusion persists. Instagram is the modern mirror of human nature, filtered, exaggerated, and emotionally dishonest, yet oddly sincere in its intent. Even technology lies now. Deepfakes, AI-generated text, fake news. Our machines have inherited our oldest trick. The tools we created to spread truth now amplify deception. But maybe that's inevitable. If lying is part of humanity, our inventions will reflect it. The internet didn't create dishonesty. It industrialized it. The more you study lying, the more it feels less like corruption and more like adaptation. Evolution favored those who could manipulate reality to their advantage. Honesty may be moral, but deceit was often practical. A hunter exaggerating his strength might attract allies. A mother hiding fear might calm her child. A leader lying about victory might boost morale. Lying kept tribes together long before truth set anyone free. We even lie to ourselves constantly, and not just about small things. We tell ourselves we're in control. We convince ourselves we're good people, that our opinions are objective, that our failures were fate, not fault. Self-deception is the brain's favorite hobby. It keeps us functioning in a chaotic world. If you saw yourself completely clearly, every flaw, every fear, every contradiction, you might not survive the weight of it. The lies we tell ourselves are psychological oxygen, but that raises an uncomfortable question. If lying is so natural, is truth even real? Or is it just the lie we all agree to call noble? Let's go back to that question. If lying is natural, what does that say about truth? Philosophers have wrestled with this for millennia. The ancient Greeks saw truth, aletheia, as unconcealment, the act of revealing what is hidden. But human beings have always been better at concealing than revealing. We build masks not because we hate truth, but because truth without disguise is unbearable. In the Middle Ages, theologians tried to rank lies by sin. A lie told to harm was mortal. A lie told to help was venial. Some argued that even silence could be deceitful if it allowed misunderstanding. The Church never fully resolved the matter. because even its saints lied. Saint Augustine once admitted that it is permissible to conceal the truth to prevent sin, and there it is again, the moral paradox. Sometimes good requires dishonesty. Fast forward to modern psychology, and the picture becomes even murkier. Sigmund Freud saw self-deception as necessary for sanity. Carl Jung went further, suggesting we all carry masks of the persona crafted to function in society. To be entirely honest, Jung argued, would be to expose raw chaos. So we edit, we cure it. We lie by omission, not out of malice, but to stay intact. Modern neuroscience supports this view. When you lie, the prefrontal cortex lights up like a control tower, suppressing truth, rehearsing fabrications, managing stress. But with practice, the brain becomes efficient. Chronic liars show less activity in those regions. The more we lie, the easier it gets. Lying rewires the brain to normalize deceit. In other words, we don't just tell lies, we become them. But here's the twist, we also lie for beauty. Stories, art, poetry, all structured deception. Shakespeare's plays are lies that tell truth. A novel is a 300-page fabrication that reveals the human heart. When someone says fictional story, what they really mean is a beautiful lie in search of honesty. The artist's task is to lie so well that it feels truer than reality. History is shaped by those lies too. Nations mythologize their origins. America calls itself the land of the free, glossing over centuries of slavery and genocide. Ancient Rome claimed divine destiny, ignoring corruption. Every country runs on narratives polished by selective truth. Patriotism, at its core, is the love of a shared lie. That doesn't mean it's evil, it means humans can't function without story. Even science, our supposed fortress of truth, is built on provisional lies. Every theory is a temporary map, not the territory. Newton's physics worked until Einstein rewrote the rules. Einstein's rules may crumble one day, too. Science is a method of refining lies until they approximate reality closely enough to be useful. The process never ends. So maybe the question isn't whether lying is wrong, it's when it serves us and when it enslaves us. Lying becomes dangerous not when we do it, but when we forget that we are. When propaganda becomes truth, when power disguises deceit as morality, lying turns from art to weapon. That's when civilizations rot. Consider totalitarian regimes. Their entire machinery depends on lying so consistently that citizens lose the ability to distinguish truth from fiction. Orwell understood this when he wrote 1984. The party's greatest triumph wasn't control of bodies, it was control of reality. When lies become language itself, truth becomes treason. That's the darkest potential of our gift for deception. Yet on the other end of the spectrum, imagine a world without lies. A society of total honesty sounds noble, but it would collapse instantly. Radical honesty, as some psychologists call it, might work for monks, but not for neighbors, families, or lovers. Imagine walking through your day saying everything you think, every judgment, every insecurity, every passing resentment. No relationship would survive. Lying is the lubricant that prevents social machinery from grinding to dust. Even evolution agrees. Studies show that children begin lying around age 2 or 3, the same time they develop theory of mind, the ability to understand that others have thoughts different from their own. In other words, the birth of empathy and the birth of deception are twins. To lie is to imagine another's mind to know what they might believe. That's not sociopathy. That's sophistication. Lying is the price of consciousness, but let's be honest, no pun intended, we lie not just to others but to the mirror. We tell ourselves stories to make existence bearable. I'm doing my best. It's going to be fine. They deserved it. These inner fictions protect fragile identities. Sometimes they empower us. Sometimes they destroy us. The self is a narrative, and every narrative is an edited truth. Maybe that's why we're drawn to liars in fiction. From Iago to Don Draper, from Gatsby to Walter White, we recognize ourselves in their masks. They embody the contradictions we live daily, the hunger for truth, the need for illusion. We admire their confidence, their audacity, their tragic fall. They remind us that the line between liar and believer is paper thin. Technology, of course, has made lying omnipresent. Deepfakes blur reality. News outlets twist narratives to fit agendas. Authenticity has become a marketing slogan. We curate identities on social media that barely resemble our real selves. The modern human is both the liar and the lied to, performing sincerity for an audience doing the same. Truth hasn't vanished, it's just buried under layers of performance. Still, there's a kind of poetic justice to that. Lying is performance, and performance is human. Even when we strive for truth, we use artifice to reach it. The teacher simplifies, the journalist edits, the lover flatters. Honesty itself requires construction. Maybe that's what makes us unique among species. We can lie consciously, reflect on it, and still long for honesty. So if lying is inevitable, the real question becomes, how do we live ethically with it? The answer, perhaps, lies not in eliminating lies but in recognizing their shape. There are lies that liberate, stories that inspire, myths that guide, white lies that soothe. And there are lies that enslave, propaganda, manipulation, self-delusion. Wisdom lies in knowing which is which. The world is built on 1,000 overlapping fictions. Money, nations, religions, love, art, they contradict each other constantly. And yet we navigate them with surprising grace. Maybe that's because somewhere deep down, we understand that truth isn't the absence of lies, it's the harmony between them. The art of being human isn't in telling the truth all the time, but in choosing our lies carefully. Let's begin this part with a small and settling thought. Lying is not an exception in human behavior, it's the default setting. We are so accustomed to it that honesty feels like a performance. The irony is almost comic. When someone says, "I'm going to be completely honest with you," what they really mean is, "Prepare yourself, because I'm about to say something impolite." Even our declarations of truth come wrapped in the expectation of disbelief. But why do we lie so naturally? The short answer is survival, but the long answer is far more interesting. It's about evolution, emotion, and the delicate architecture of social life. The ability to deceive didn't just help early humans avoid danger, it helped them cooperate. Because cooperation often requires pretending. Picture two hunters tens of thousands of years ago. They've spent the whole day chasing prey and come home empty-handed. One of them claims he saw a massive herd just over the ridge, even though he didn't. His story rekindles hope, keeps morale high, motivates the group to keep hunting. The lie maintains unity. Without it, despair spreads. That's the paradox of deception. Sometimes it preserves reality better than truth. Lying became a form of emotional currency. You flatter to maintain peace, exaggerate to inspire, conceal to protect. Over time, this evolved into a complex social skill. The liar and the listener entered a silent pact. I'll pretend to believe this if you pretend to mean it. Civilization is built on those micro-contracts. Anthropologists call this the social contract of fiction. In essence, we agree to live inside shared illusions. Language itself is the greatest of those illusions. Words are just noises that we collectively agree to interpret. They don't capture truth. They approximate it. Every conversation is a dance between honesty and invention. And no society has ever existed without its master storytellers, the official liars, the mythmakers. Long before journalism or science, we had bards and priests, shamans and poets, whose job was to shape reality into something meaningful. Their stories explain thunder, death, love, and fate. They lied beautifully, and we called it wisdom. Take ancient Egypt. The pharaohs were not just rulers. They were gods, living embodiments of divine order. Everyone knew they weren't literally gods, yet the lie unified the kingdom. Or ancient Greece, the myth of Zeus hurling lightning was both absurd and essential. It gave chaos personality, made the world feel relatable. The power of myth wasn't in its accuracy, but in its usefulness. Even the word fiction comes from the Latin finger, to shape or mold. To create a fiction is not to destroy truth, but to sculpt it into a human form. Lies, in this sense, are art. They transform raw confusion into story. That's why every culture, even the most scientific, tells myths. The Big Bang, evolution, capitalism, each has its own mythic quality. They're frameworks we use to survive reality's incomprehensibility. Children understand this instinctively. When a kid lies, they're not just avoiding punishment, they're experimenting with imagination. They're testing boundaries between what is and what could be. Studies show that children who lie early often score higher on measures of creativity and intelligence. The ability to fabricate means you can envision alternate possibilities. In that way, lying is rehearsal for innovation, but then society punishes them for it. We tell children, "Don't lie," while we model deception daily. Parents say, "Be honest." then answer the phone and claim, "We're just leaving the house," while still in pajamas. Kids learn not that lying is wrong, but that it must be done skillfully. They become apprentices in the craft. As adults, we lie mostly to avoid social friction. We lie to keep relationships intact, to protect egos, to prevent embarrassment. In a strange way, lying is an act of love, or at least, of compassion. When someone asks, "Do you miss me?" the truthful answer might be complicated, but saying, "Of course," smooths the emotional surface. Lying is the maintenance work of intimacy, yet lying also exposes us. It reveals our desires, our fears, our need to belong. The lies we tell say more about us than the truths we hide. A person who lies about success fears failure. One who lies about kindness fears rejection. Even self-deception is confession in disguise. When we lie to ourselves, we expose our deepest wish for the world to be gentler than it is. The art of lying has evolved alongside technology. In oral cultures, lies were local gossip, legends, rumors. With writing, lies became permanent. You could record deception in stone, carry it across centuries. The invention of the printing press industrialized lying. Suddenly, falsehood could travel faster than correction. In the digital age, it's instantaneous. Every tweet, every post, every image is a potential half-truth or full fabrication. We now live inside a cloud of lies, and we call it content. What's fascinating is how quickly we adapt. The human brain is designed not for truth, but for coherence. We want stories that make sense, not necessarily ones that are real. So when we encounter a lie that feels emotionally satisfying, we accept it. That's why propaganda works. That's why conspiracy theories thrive. They give chaos a plot. They turn random pain into cosmic purpose. Psychologists call this narrative bias. It's not that we love lies, it's that we hate confusion. The mind will choose a comforting fiction over an unsettling fact every time. Truth is complex and contradictory. Lies are clean and decisive. Their lying to us is simpler than reality is messy. We are addicted to simplicity, and lying is its dealer. But lying has always been double-edged. It creates civilizations and destroys them. The same skill that builds community can breed corruption. The same illusion that comforts can also control. Every empire in history has run on lies: divine right, racial superiority, national destiny, and each eventually collapses under their weight. Lies are scaffolds. They help build structures but cannot hold them forever. Think of ancient Rome. The empire justified conquest as civilization. The lie worked until the empire's own citizens stopped believing it. Think of colonialism, the white man's burden, a self-congratulatory myth of progress that masked greed and exploitation. Lies always sound noble at first. That's their camouflage. Even now, we swim in modern myths that future generations will find laughable. We tell ourselves that endless growth is sustainable, that technology will solve every problem, that meritocracy is real. These are not scientific truths, they're moral fictions that keep the machine running. We can't live without them. The only question is when they'll crack. But before you despair, consider this: lying also drives progress. Every visionary, every artist, every revolutionary begins by telling a lie. A world like this could exist. That's fiction. And yet, by believing it, we make it real. The Wright brothers lied to gravity. Martin Luther King lied to history. He described a dream that didn't exist yet. Every great truth begins as a beautiful lie. So perhaps the problem isn't lying itself, but our relationship with it. We think of truth and falsehood as opposites, when in fact they're partners in creation. Truth without imagination is sterile. Imagination without truth is chaos. The balance between them is what makes life possible. Let's zoom in on one of the most fascinating forms of lying: self-deception. It's the quiet engine that powers most of our lives. You tell yourself you're over someone when you're not. You insist you're happy in your job even as you dread Mondays. You claim you don't care about others' opinions while checking your phone for validation every hour. We lie to ourselves constantly, and if we stopped, we might crumble. Neuroscientists say self-deception is not a bug but a feature of the brain. It helps reduce cognitive dissonance, the discomfort of holding contradictory beliefs. You can believe you're a good person while doing things that contradict that image, as long as you twist the story slightly. I had no choice. They deserved it. It's not really a lie, it's just bending the truth. These micro-adjustments keep your self-image intact. Without them, the mirror would crack. Politicians do this on a grand scale. Every scandal begins with self-deception. I'm not lying. I'm protecting. I'm not greedy. I'm ambitious. I'm not corrupt. I'm pragmatic. Once they believe their own excuses, the external lies come naturally. The greatest liars are not the ones who fool others, they're the ones who first fool themselves. But before we condemn them too harshly, we should admit, we all do it. You don't have to be a tyrant to rewrite your own story. Every human narrative is edited for continuity. We forget our failures, highlight our victories, and censor the inconvenient truths. Memory isn't a recording, it's a screenplay rewritten with each replay. The stories we tell ourselves about who we are comforting lies we can't live without. History, too, is one long act of self-deception. Nations curate memory. School books highlight heroism and minimize atrocity. Holidays celebrate victories but skip over the bloodshed. Every country lies to itself to maintain identity. We are the good guys. It's a powerful myth, and every society needs it until it doesn't, because eventually, an acknowledged lies corrode from within. Corporations lie through marketing. This car gives you freedom. This phone connects you to meaning. This soda equals happiness. The logic is absurd, but it works because it appeals to desire, not intellect. Marketing is industrialized self-deception, selling us illusions we willingly buy. We don't want the truth that a car is just metal or that a soda is sugar water. We want the lie that it fills the emotional gaps of our lives, even in personal life. We do this. We call certain lies white as if innocence could be painted on deception. You look great. I loved your cooking. I'm on my way. White lies are the glue of civility. They make social life tolerable. Radical honesty would turn dinner parties into wars. Yet every white lie leaves a residue, the subtle realization that truth and kindness rarely coexist. Let's not forget the professional liars, magicians, actors, and writers. Their lies are consensual. You pay for the pleasure of being fooled. You watch a movie knowing it's fiction, yet your body responds as if it's real, heart racing, tears flowing. That's the beauty of the voluntary lie. It gives truth emotional form. Art lies to tell the truth. Religion functions similarly. Its myths, creation stories, miracles, divine messages are not factual in a scientific sense, but they reveal deep psychological truths. They remind us that life has meaning, that morality matters, that love transcends death. Even atheists live by myths, narratives of progress, science, reason. Everyone worships something, even if it's just their own reflection. The digital era has turned lying into a feedback loop. Algorithms reward engagement, not accuracy. Outrage spreads faster than correction. Lies go viral because they evoke stronger emotion than truth. A sensational falsehood will circle the globe before a nuanced fact leaves the lab. And humans love stories with villains and heroes more than stories with complexity. The internet didn't invent lying, it just put it on steroids. Ironically, technology has also exposed us to more truth than ever. We have access to data, leaks, recordings, satellites, and yet confusion reigns. Too much truth feels indistinguishable from chaos, so people retreat into comforting lies. We pick news sources that affirm what we already believe. We surround ourselves with people who echo our biases. This is confirmation bias, and it's the psychological equivalent of lying to yourself in stereo. Even science is not immune. Researchers cherry-pick data, exaggerate findings, or frame results to attract funding. Publish or perish incentivizes elegant lies disguised as breakthroughs. It's not always corruption, sometimes it's desperation. But it shows that even truth-seeking institutions must wrestle with the temptation of narrative over fact. So, where does this leave us? If lying is everywhere in politics, religion, art, science, and daily life, does truth even exist? I'd say yes, but it's fragile. Truth is not a permanent object. It's a relationship. It's the ongoing negotiation between competing lies. The best we can do is choose the lies that serve life rather than destroy it. That may sound cynical, but it's actually liberating. When you stop expecting perfect honesty, you start valuing sincerity, the honest awareness of our dishonesty. You accept that human connection requires illusion, but you try to wield it responsibly. That's the moral evolution of lying, not to eliminate it, but to refine it. Because when we lie well, kindly, creatively, consciously, we build bridges. When we lie poorly, selfishly, cruelly, blindly, we burn them. The difference is empathy. A lie told with empathy heals. A lie told for power corrupts. The choice between those two defines civilizations. So maybe the art of living truthfully is not to speak only the truth, but to lie beautifully, to craft fictions that reveal something real, to imagine better worlds and call them possible. Because every truth we live by today, freedom, equality, love, began as someone's unbelievable story. Lying has always been a mirror. It reflects not just what we want to hide but what we wish were true. Every era invents its favorite lies, the ones that make people feel safe, righteous, or powerful. If you want to understand a civilization, don't look at what it says is true, look at what it chooses to lie about. Take ancient mythologies. When people didn't understand thunder, they invented gods who hurled bolts in anger. When they couldn't explain disease, they blamed curses or spirits. Those weren't just primitive misunderstandings, they were emotional technologies. Lies filled the space where knowledge hadn't yet arrived, turning fear into narrative. Humans can't stand the blank silence of the unknown. Lying gives the chaos a voice. Then came organized religion, which formalized lying into doctrine not as malice, but as necessity. The idea of an afterlife, for instance, is a masterpiece of collective fiction. It solved a fundamental problem: how to make mortality tolerable. If death is not the end but a doorway, life becomes meaningful. Whether that's true is irrelevant to its function. The lie gave shape to morality, law, and culture. Without it, civilization might never have formed. Every major social system, from religion to monarchy to capitalism, rests on a kind of useful fiction. The king's divine right was a lie that kept order. The idea that all men are created equal was, at first, a lie too, because not all were treated that way. But it was a lie that pointed toward truth. Lies can be aspirational. They can describe not what is, but what ought to be. Even love depends on selective lying. When you fall in love, your brain floods with dopamine, oxytocin, and fantasy. You edit reality. You ignore red flags, inflate virtues, romanticize flaws. You're not seeing the person, you're seeing the story you've created about them. That's why early love feels like magic. It's mutual hallucination. Later, when the chemicals fade, truth returns and couples must decide whether to rebuild love on honesty or nostalgia. Most relationships fail not because of too many lies, but because the dream collapses. Lying also creates art, and art is what makes us human. Cave paintings were early fictions, hunters painting animals they hoped to catch, rituals to manifest abundance. From there came theater, literature, film, all sophisticated lies designed to evoke truth. Art doesn't deceive maliciously. It lies to reveal. That's why we cry during movies. Our brains know it's fiction, but our emotions don't care. The lie touches something deeper than facts ever could. Politics, of course, is where lying graduates to an Olympic sport. Ancient rulers lied about divine ancestry. Modern leaders lie about approval ratings. The techniques have evolved, but the purpose hasn't. Control perception. The power to shape reality through narrative is the essence of leadership. Even democracy depends on storytelling. Campaigns are myth-making machines. Politicians sell not policies but plots. The struggling nation, the heroic reformer, the evil opponent. You don't vote for facts. You vote for stories that flatter your worldview. The 20th century perfected this. Propaganda became industrialized. Hitler's regime weaponized the big lie to deception so enormous that people assumed it must be true because no one would dare invent something that audacious. Stalin rewrote history books. The United States invented PR, public relations, a polite word for controlled lying. Advertising took the methods of propaganda and turned them toward consumption. Buy this, and you'll be happy. It's the same psychology, just RABRANDD. Yet, before we scoff at the past, look at the present. The internet has made every individual a potential liar on a global scale. Social media is a hall of mirrors where performance replaces reality. People post highlight reels of their lives, filtered, curated, exaggerated. Look how happy I am. Look how successful I am. It's not exactly lying. It's selective truth. But selective truth is the most seductive lie of all. It's the kind that fools even the teller. In fact, social media has turned lying into a skill. Influencers craft personas. Corporations pose as friends. Even authenticity is staged. Be yourself has become a brand strategy. The irony is breathtaking. People now lie to appear honest. The line between performance and sincerity has blurred so completely that many no longer care to separate them. What matters is not truth but engagement. This is not entirely new. The Victorians had their own version of Instagram-painted portraits that exaggerated beauty and status. The difference now is speed and scale. A single false tweet can ignite revolutions or ruin reputations. Lies once took years to spread. Now they travel at the speed of Wi-Fi. Humanity has created the most powerful truth distribution system in history and uses it primarily to circulate beautifully packaged nonsense. But lying also reveals something hopeful: our capacity for imagination. Every innovation begins with a form of deception. This machine will fly. This metal will talk. This disease will be cured. For centuries, those were lies, and then they became true. Progress often begins as fiction we refuse to abandon. The dreamers, the inventors, the visionaries, they lie about what's possible until the world catches up. That's why lying is so dangerous and so necessary. It's a double-edged sword. The same mental machinery that creates propaganda also creates poetry. The same imagination that builds illusions for control also builds utopias for hope. The difference lies in intention. Lies born from fear enslave. Lies born from vision liberate. Consider the language we use around lying. White lies, noble lies, half-truths, spin. These terms soften the act, blur its edges. But deep down, we know that lying is not binary. It's a spectrum from the harmless to the catastrophic. The lie that tells your grandmother her cookies are delicious is not the same as the lie that starts a war. But both stem from the same source: empathy. The liar imagines another's perspective and shapes reality to fit it. That's what makes us such extraordinary liars. We lie not out of ignorance, but out of understanding. Here's a thought experiment. What would happen if we suddenly became incapable of lying? Not just verbally, but emotionally. If every face, tone, and gesture broadcasted the truth, relationships would shatter overnight. Diplomacy would collapse. Comedy would die. Entire industries, politics, marketing, even entertainment would vanish. Honesty sounds virtuous until you realize how much of life depends on pretending. And yet, we crave truth. We build religions around it, pursue it in science, and ache for it in love. We despise being lied to while lying constantly. This contradiction defines us. Maybe that's why truth feels sacred. It's so rare. When someone tells you something brutally honest, it cuts through the noise like light through fog. It shocks you because it's alien. But even truth, when weaponized, becomes cruel. Brutal honesty is often just brutality with good PR. People who boast about telling it like it is are usually using truth as a club, not a gift. Real honesty requires compassion. It's not the absence of lying but the presence of care. The goal isn't to strip people naked with truth, it's to help them live with it. Let's talk about the lies that shape entire generations, the ones so big we forget they're lies. Every age builds its identity on a foundation of selective storytelling. For the Victorians, it was the illusion of moral purity. For the 20th century, it was the myth of progress. For us, it's authenticity, the lie that we can be completely real while performing for an audience. Authenticity has become the modern holy grail. Be yourself. Every influencer preaches, while filming 20 takes to get the lighting right. It's an exquisite irony. We now lie to appear honest. Every selfie is a confession wrapped in a filter. We don't fake perfection anymore. We fake vulnerability. The new lie is sincerity. Look how unfiltered I am, says the caption, carefully staged. This isn't hypocrisy. It's adaptation. We lie the way fish swim invisibly, naturally. Social life requires constant calibration of truth. You exaggerate enthusiasm for your boss's joke, soften criticism for your partner, pretend to remember names. These micro-lies are the grease that keeps social gears turning. Without them, every interaction would grind with friction, and yet each small lie leaves a trace. They accumulate into a fog of shared understanding that no one is completely honest. That fog is where modern life happens. We no longer live in a world of black and white truths, but in gradients of performance. Every identity, gender, profession, nationality is a kind of role, a costume worn for belonging. Lying, then, is not just about hiding facts, it's about editing reality. And editing, as any writer knows, is where meaning emerges. We cut, shape, and reframe experience to make it coherent. Life is raw footage. Lying is the edit that turns it into a story. The problem is when we forget we're the editors and start believing the cut is the whole truth. Consider advertising again. It's easy to mock slogans like "because you're worth it" or "just do it." But beneath their absurdity lies a deep psychological truth. People crave affirmation. These corporate lies succeed because they tap into genuine human longing. A lie that makes you feel seen can be more persuasive than a truth that makes you feel small. Politics works the same way. Every campaign is a narrative war. Facts matter less than feelings. The candidate who tells the story people want to believe wins. Make America great again. Hope and change. Take back control. Each slogan is a masterpiece of emotional deception. They don't describe reality. They summon it. The success of these lies isn't in their accuracy but in their ability to mobilize imagination. Even revolutions run on lies. The French Revolution promised liberty, equality, fraternity and delivered guillotines. The Russian Revolution promised workers' paradise and built gulags. Every uprising begins with a dream that reality can't quite deliver. But the dream matters. The noble lie, even when it fails, pushes the world forward. Science, too, tells lies for progress. Simplified models, idealized equations, metaphors like genetic code or selfish gene, none are literally true. But they're useful fictions. Science advances by lying precisely, by creating frameworks that are false but functional until better ones replace them. The history of discovery is the history of elegant deception. Education trains us to accept these fictions. In school, we memorize sanitized histories and simplified theories. We're told Columbus discovered America, electrons orbit like planets, water boils at 10 C, all technically untrue or incomplete. But we teach them because complexity must be simplified before it can be understood. We learn through necessary lies. That's why the demand for pure truth is naive. Life runs on functional falsehoods. You don't need the full truth about every meal, every emotion, every decision. You need just enough truth to stay oriented, and just enough illusion to stay hopeful. The art of living is balancing these two forces. Even friendship depends on this balance. Friends don't tell each other everything. They tell each other what the friendship can handle. Silence, omission, and tact are forms of mercy. Honesty without empathy is cruelty disguised as virtue. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can say is nothing, but lies also have a life cycle. They age, decay, and eventually collapse under their own weight. History is littered with the ruins of outdated lies, divine monarchies, racial hierarchies, scientific dogmas. When the fiction breaks, chaos follows until new lies replace the old. That's progress, in a strange way, the evolution of deception. Even personal lies follow this arc. You can pretend to be someone you're not for years, but eventually the strain shows. The mask cracks, the script falters, the truth leaks out. And when it does, it's both terrifying and liberating. Because once the lie collapses, you're free to write a new one, maybe one closer to who you really are. So perhaps lying isn't a flaw in the system. It is the system. Truth and falsehood aren't opposites, they're partners in the dance of meaning. Lies give structure to chaos. Truth tests their strength. The cycle never ends. And that's the strange comfort of it. The world has never been built on honesty, yet it endures. Humanity is a species of storytellers, and storytelling is lying with intent. The best we can do is lie in service of something larger than ourselves, to build connection, to spark hope, to create beauty. Because if we're honest, and that's always risky, the difference between a liar and a visionary is mostly timing. Let's take a strange literal lie about lying. One of the biggest myths in modern culture is that honesty is the opposite of deceit. We imagine truth and lies as two sides of a moral coin. But in practice, they aren't enemies. They're relatives. They depend on each other to exist. You can't recognize a lie without first knowing something about truth. And you can't value truth without understanding how fragile it is in a world of fiction. That's why lying is not just a flaw, it's a feature of communication itself. Every time you speak, you're already simplifying, selecting, exaggerating. You leave things out, you choose tone and framing. Language itself is a filter. Even if you never intend to deceive, every sentence you utter hides more than it reveals. The philosopher Nietzsche once said, "Truths are illusions which we have forgotten are illusions." He was right. Every word is a metaphor that once served as a lie we collectively agreed to believe. Take history. We call it the story of what happened, but that's not accurate. History is the story of what we choose to remember, and even that memory is constantly rewritten. The victors tell one version, the oppressed another, and the truth hides somewhere between. National histories are curated myths. They're designed to create unity, not accuracy. The flag, the anthem, the national heroes, they're not facts. They're symbols, beautiful lies designed to bind strangers into citizens. Think about family histories, too. Every family has stories told around the dinner table: how your grandparents met, how your parents struggled, who the black sheep was. These stories shape identity. But if you dig deep enough, you'll find contradictions. Memory at its pain embellishes success and silences shame. The family narrative is a collective lie that makes belonging possible. Without it, the past would be chaos. Even love stories rely on myth. Couples rewrite their beginnings to sound more romantic. We met by chance, they'll say, ignoring the mutual friend who planned it. It was love at first sight, they'll insist, erasing months of awkward texting. These lies aren't malicious, they're meaning-making. Love thrives on storytelling. A relationship without myth is just logistics. Religion mastered this art long before Tinder. The greatest religious narratives, the creation, the flood, the resurrection, are not meant to be read as journalism but as poetry. Their truth lies in metaphor, not measurement. To demand scientific accuracy from them is to miss their point entirely. Myths are lies that convey moral architecture. They're blueprints for behavior, maps of the invisible. Science, ironically, does the same thing in reverse. It tells metaphors that claim not to be metaphors. The universe began with a bang. DNA is a code. The brain is a computer. These are linguistic shortcuts for complex and certain realities. They're useful, but still symbolic. The language of science is full of lies that work. And that's what matters. They worked out. Art, of course, embraces lying proudly. An artist doesn't apologize for creating illusions. The painter deceives the eye. The novelist fabricates entire worlds. The filmmaker manipulates emotion. But in doing so, they reveal emotional truths that facts can't touch. That's why fiction often feels more real than news. A well-told lie can expose the human condition better than 1,000 statistics. Politics sits somewhere between art and crime. Politicians tell stories, not facts. We are the best, they are the threat. The future will be glorious. These are the narrative structures of myth. The problem arises when people forget they're listening to fiction. When myth is mistaken for fact, manipulation becomes possible. Every propaganda machine in history relied on this confusion, turning storytelling into ideology. Lying, then, is not just about words, it's about power. The ability to control the story is the ability to control reality. That's why censorship exists, why propaganda thrives, why dictators fear comedians and poets. Humor and art are dangerous because they reveal the lie behind the official lie. They show people that reality is negotiable, and that realization is revolutionary. Even in personal life, lying is power. The child who tells their parents "I didn't do it" is testing boundaries, exploring autonomy. The teenager who hides a relationship is claiming independence. The adult who lies to protect a secret is defending identity. Every lie contains a seed of rebellion. Lying says, "You don't control my truth." And yet, total honesty can also be tyranny. The truth, when weaponized, can wound. You look tired, you've gained weight, you'll never make it. These may be true, but they destroy rather than enlighten. The ethical question isn't whether to lie, but when to. Lying is moral camouflage. Sometimes it hides cruelty, sometimes it hides kindness. The challenge is knowing which. Now let's look at lying through culture's evolution. In pre-modern societies, lying was judged by its effect on the group. If it preserved harmony, it was tolerated. In Confucian China, harmony outweighed individual truth. In medieval Europe, the church dictated truth through scripture, and lying against doctrine was heresy. In modern democracies, truth became personal, subjective, a right and a responsibility. But even freedom of speech is a kind of social contract. We lie a little to get along. The Renaissance was a golden age for beautiful lies. Painters used perspective, a deliberate illusion, to make flat surfaces appear three-dimensional. Writers like Machiavelli redefined deceit as strategy. It is better to be feared than loved, he said, not because fear is noble, but because honesty rarely wins wars. The Renaissance celebrated cunning. The liar became the hero of survival, not the villain of sin. Fast forward to the Enlightenment, and reason tried to banish lies. Philosophers like Kant declared that lying was always immoral, under any circumstance. But reality refused to cooperate. Even Kant admitted, reluctantly, that politeness sometimes required discretion. Voltaire, ever the provocateur, mocked this moral rigidity. Men use thought only to justify their wrongdoings, he wrote. They use speech to conceal their thoughts. The Enlightenment promised reason, but humans remained poets of falsehood. The Industrial Revolution brought a new form of lying, advertising. For the first time, deception became an industry. Posters promised miracles in bottles. Cigarettes were sold as health aids. Soap could make you beautiful, and cars could make you free. Capitalism professionalized lying, turning persuasion into profit. The 20th century perfected delusion. Madison Avenue became the new priesthood of consumer belief. By the time we reached the information age, truth itself had become a product. News outlets, politicians, and influencers compete for narrative dominance. The line between misinformation and entertainment dissolved. Facts became opinions. Opinions became identities. We no longer argue over what's true, we argue over which lies we prefer. And yet, despite all this noise, we still hunger for truth. The irony is almost touching. A species that lies by reflex still writes constitutions, oaths, and mission statements about honesty. Politicians swear on sacred books. Lovers promise eternal faithfulness. Journalists chase objectivity. We perform our devotion to truth even as we violate it daily. It's not hypocrisy, it's aspiration. The human being is the only animal ashamed of its own deception, but shame itself is another kind of lie. It's the illusion that there is a perfect version of us somewhere inside, waiting to be uncovered if we just stop lying. The truth is more humbling. There is no pure self underneath. The masks are us. The act of pretending, negotiating, editing, these are the mechanisms of personality. Authenticity is not removing masks but choosing which ones to wear consciously. That realization can be terrifying, but also freeing. It means that lying is not a moral failure, it's a creative act. Every day you construct a narrative version of yourself that the world can understand. You adapt your voice for your boss, your partner, your friends. You edit your personality for survival. It's not deceit, it's translation. Total transparency would be chaos. Like shouting every thought in a crowded room. We need fictions to communicate. But here's the paradox. While lies connect us, they also divide us. Every belief system, every ideology, is a collective story that unites insiders and alienates outsiders. Religion, nationalism, even fandoms all build belonging on shared illusions. We are the chosen, we are the best, we are right. The most unifying words in any language are also the most deceptive. Because behind every we is an invisible they. This is why lying has always been political. Control the narrative, and you control who belongs. Empires rise on sacred lies and fall when they're exposed. Look at Rome's myth of destiny, Britain's myth of civilization, America's myth of freedom. Each story justified conquest and comforted conscience. But when the contradictions became too glaring, the lies cracked, and revolutions followed. That's the danger of forgetting that a lie is a lie. Myths can guide, but they can also blind. The moment a society stops questioning its sacred stories, it becomes captive to them. That's why satire and art are vital. They keep us honest about our dishonesty. The jester could mock the king when no one else dared. The comedian, the novelist, the filmmaker, there are modern truth-tellers. Smuggling honesty through laughter and fiction. Think about Orwell's Animal Farm. On the surface, it's a story about pigs. In reality, it's a lie that exposes truth about power and corruption. That's what great art does, it lies to reveal. George Orwell himself understood that language is the battlefield of truth. Political language, he wrote, is designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectable. Every era invents euphemisms to hide its sins. Collateral damage, enhanced interrogation, alternative facts, the vocabulary changes. But the impulse remains the same, to make reality bearable through linguistic magic. Technology has only refined that magic. Artificial intelligence can now fabricate faces, voices, even entire realities. Deepfakes blur the line between truth and imagination. We stand on the edge of a world where seeing is no longer believing. The ancient warning, the devil is the father of lies, has gone digital. But the real danger isn't that machines will lie to us. It's that we'll prefer their lies to our own messy truths. Because, let's be honest, we already do. We'd rather believe a flattering algorithm than a critical friend. We want the feed that agrees with us, the headline that reassures us, the echo that comforts us. The greatest liar in your life is not the media, the government, or your neighbor. It's your own confirmation bias. The lies we tell ourselves are the ones that stick. And yet, there's a strange grace in that. Self-deception, in moderation, is what keeps us functioning. Believing you can change when evidence says otherwise is delusional and necessary. Thinking your life has meaning despite cosmic indifference is irrational and vital. The universe doesn't promise coherence, but our lies create it. Without illusion, there is no purpose. But here's where the line matters. Lies that comfort must not become lies that control. The moment illusion becomes institution, it metastasizes. Propaganda, extremism, cults, these are lies that forgot they were lies. They feed on certainty, the most seductive drug of all. Certainty kills curiosity. The liar who believes his own story becomes a tyrant. So how do we live ethically in a world built on fiction? Maybe by cultivating a sense of play. The difference between manipulation and art is playfulness, the awareness that this is performance. When a magician performs, you know you're being deceived, and that consent makes the trick joyful. When a demagogue lies, he demands belief, and that makes it tyranny. The moral difference is permission. We can't escape lies, but we can choose which ones to live by. We can tell stories that connect instead of divide, inspire instead of exploit. We can admit that truth and fiction aren't opposites but dance partners, each keeping the other in check. The goal is not purity, it's balance. So maybe the honest life is not the one without lies, but the one aware of them. To lie knowingly, with empathy and imagination, is to be human. To lie blindly, without awareness or compassion, is to be monstrous. The art of lying well is, paradoxically, the art of being real. Let's begin this part with a confession. I'm lying to you right now. Not maliciously, not even consciously, but inevitably. Every word I choose hides 10 others. Every sentence edits away complexity to make this story flow. Even when we try to tell the truth, we lie by structure. Language is compression, and compression is distortion. If honesty means total accuracy, then honesty is impossible. That realization isn't cynical, it's freeing. It means the goal of life is not perfect truth, but meaningful truth. The kind that helps us live, connect, and move forward. Every culture, every art form, every philosophy is an attempt to craft a useful version of reality. Truth is not a mirror, it's a lens. And lying is how we polish that lens to focus on what matters. Let's rewind to childhood, where we first learn this art. Children discover lying the same way they discover imagination, by experimenting with what reality allows. When a toddler denies eating the cookie while crumbs coat their face, they're not evil. They're creative. They're learning that words can shape perception. That realization is thrilling. It's the birth of narrative power. The first lie is the first spark of storytelling. Parents often react with alarm, but psychologists see early lying as a developmental milestone. It proves theory of mind, the ability to understand that others have thoughts separate from your own. The liar must imagine what another person knows or believes, and manipulate that gap. In other words, to lie is to empathize. That's the paradox. Empathy and deceit grow from the same root. As children mature, they refine this skill. They learn when lying is rewarded and when it backfires. Society teaches the etiquette of deception: when to flatter, when to conceal, when to confess. We call this tact, but tact is simply lying with good manners. You don't tell your friend their haircut is a disaster. You say, it's different. You don't tell your partner their story is boring. You say, that's interesting. These aren't betrayals, they're social grace. Civilization depends on such tiny distortions. In adolescence, lying becomes identity building. Teenagers lie to parents not only to hide behavior but to experiment with selves. Where were you? Out? Doing what? Nothing. Those evasions aren't just rebellion, they're boundaries. The teenager is carving private space in a world that demands transparency. Every generation must lie to its elders to become something new. As adults, we internalize these patterns. Our social survival depends on managing truth strategically. Workplaces reward those who can deliver bad news diplomatically. Friendships thrive on selective honesty. Even romantic relationships, supposedly built on trust, survive through omission. You don't tell your partner every passing attraction or doubt. Love requires a little fiction to stay alive, but lying, like any art, can become addiction. Once you realize how malleable reality is, the temptation to reshape it never ends. Power amplifies this. Leaders, celebrities, and influencers learn that perception is reality. Control the narrative, and you control the world. The danger begins when they believe their own stories, when performance replaces personhood. That's why the most destructive liars are often the most sincere. History's worst deceivers weren't cartoon villains twirling mustaches, they were believers. They convinced themselves their lies served a higher purpose: religion, nation, progress, destiny. Self-deception turns lies from tools into weapons. When a lie stops being conscious, it becomes ideology. Ideology is humanity's grandest and most seductive lie. It promises certainty in a chaotic world. It simplifies complexity into slogans. It turns doubt into sin. We know the truth, it whispers, and they don't. That's the root of fanaticism. Every inquisition, crusade, and genocide began as a story told with conviction. That's the tragedy of our brilliance. We lie so well we can destroy ourselves with belief. But ideology isn't limited to politics or religion. It infects science, art, and even self-help. The law of attraction, for instance, is a lie that says you can manifest wealth through thought alone. It's nonsense, but comforting nonsense. It replaces randomness with control. The human mind would rather live inside a flattering lie than face indifferent reality. That's not weakness, it's survival instinct. Advertising exploits the same impulse. It sells fantasies disguised as products: freedom in a car, happiness in a drink, self-worth in a gadget. You know it's a lie, but you buy it anyway, because hope feels better than cynicism. The most successful advertisements don't convince, they enchant. They offer identity. You're not buying sneakers, they say. You're buying confidence. The line between inspiration and manipulation is razor thin. Now, before we judge too harshly, let's remember, truth-telling isn't always noble either. Honesty can be cruelty in disguise. The friend who says, "I'm just being honest," often means, "I want to hurt you without guilt." Brutal honesty is just brutality with a halo. Real integrity requires empathy, the ability to know when truth liberates and when it wounds. The challenge is that lies evolve faster than truth. Truth needs evidence, consensus, time. Lies need only desire. They adapt like viruses, mutating to fit new hosts. A good lie is flexible. It tells people what they want to believe, then hides inside that comfort. That's why conspiracy theories spread so easily. They flatter the believer's intelligence. You're one of the few who sees through it. It's an ego trip disguised as enlightenment. Technology turbocharges this dynamic. The internet turned lying from a human flaw into a planetary system. Algorithms reward outrage, not accuracy. Deepfakes erase the boundary between memory and manipulation. AI-generated voices mimic sincerity. The digital world doesn't just contain lies, it manufactures them faster than we can detect. In a sense, we've built a mirror so perfect that it reflects not truth, but our hunger for illusion. And yet, the solution isn't to destroy the mirror. It's to recognize it. Awareness, not purity, is our salvation. We can't eliminate lying without eliminating imagination. What we can do is develop better taste, learn to tell meaningful fictions from malignant ones. Because not all lies are equal. Some illuminate, some corrode. The artist's lie reveals. The tyrant's lie enslaves. The difference is intent. In philosophy, this balance is ancient. Plato warned of the noble lie, a falsehood told to preserve social harmony. Nietzsche countered with the idea of necessary illusions, fictions that empower rather than deceive. Both understood that human beings need stories to live. The question is never truth or lie, but which lie keeps us human. The modern world complicates this. We live in overlapping realities: scientific, digital, emotional, and each demands its own version of honesty. Online, you craft a persona. At work, you play a role. At home, you perform intimacy. None of these versions is false, but none is complete. We are multiple fictions stitched together by memory. The honest self is not the one without masks. It's the one aware of wearing them. That's the quiet wisdom in ancient theater. When Greek actors put on masks, the audience didn't feel deceived, they felt enlightened. The mask didn't hide truth. It made truth visible. It reminded everyone that identity is performance. Maybe we need to recover that innocence to lie consciously, gracefully, artfully, and above all, kindly. Because the goal isn't to abolish lies, it's to elevate them. Let's explore a different kind of lie, the one that builds rather than destroys. Because for all the damage deception causes, without it, we'd have no hope, no art, no progress, no comfort. The best lies aren't about denial. They're about possibility. They give us something to reach for. Think of the phrase "everything will be okay." Objectively, that's false. Not everything will be okay. Bad things happen. People die. Plans fail. But we say it anyway, to others and to ourselves. It's not a statement of fact, it's a spell. A small act of defiance against despair. We lie to keep going. Humans are meaning-making creatures, and meaning often begins with fiction. We tell stories to connect events, to turn randomness into order. It happened for a reason. I was meant to learn this. None of these are provable truths, but they help us endure uncertainty. Without those narratives, life would feel like chaos. Our lies are the scaffolding of sanity. Even science, for all its rigor, begins with imagination, hypotheses that might as well be lies until proven otherwise. The first scientist who imagined that invisible germs caused disease was lying compared to the knowledge of his time. The dreamers of flight lied to gravity. The dreamers of equality lied to history. Every leap forward began as an exaggeration of what could be true someday. Love itself is sustained by such exaggerations. You're my forever. No one will ever replace you. These phrases are emotionally true but temporally false. They describe not eternity, but intensity. We lie to express what logic can't contain. Love without a little fiction would feel transactional. The lie gives it poetry. In the same way, hope is a form of emotional deceit. It assumes a better tomorrow without evidence. It's irrational, but essential. Hope propels revolutions, inventions, recoveries. It keeps people alive in hospitals and prisons. It's the most compassionate lie we tell ourselves, that tomorrow can be different from today. This is why truth, for all its nobility, can never rule alone. Pure truth is cold, inert, indifferent. Lies give it warmth, color, direction. The art of living well is the art of balancing these forces, to believe just enough fiction to make reality bearable. Of course, there's danger in overindulgence. When hope detaches from reality, it becomes delusion. When belief rejects evidence, it mutates into fanaticism. Every cult begins as a comforting lie that refuses to stay humble. The tragedy of lying isn't that we do it, it's that we forget we're doing it. So how do we lie well? The first rule is awareness. A conscious lie is art. An unconscious one is pathology. When you know you're telling a story, you remain free. When you forget it's a story, it owns you. This is why good fiction frees the mind, while propaganda enslaves it. The novelist whispers, "This is made up." The tyrant insists, "This is truth." The second rule is empathy. Lies told with empathy create connection. Lies told for control destroy it. When you say you look great to a friend who's insecure, the lie becomes kindness. When a politician says we are under attack to justify power, the lie becomes poison. Intent defines morality more than accuracy. The third rule is humility. Every belief, no matter how true it feels, is partial. A good liar, like a good storyteller, knows when to end the tale, when to leave room for contradiction. Arrogance turns fiction into dogma. Humility keeps it human. And perhaps the final rule, beauty. We forgive lies that are beautiful because they make life larger. Once upon a time, I love you. You can do it. These are the world's most repeated falsehoods and its most necessary ones. Lying is not the corruption of truth. It's the fertilizer of meaning. Without it, truth would never grow. So maybe, instead of asking, "How do we stop lying?" we should ask, "How do we lie responsibly?" Like fire, lying warms or burns depending on how it's used. You can illuminate a room or set it on fire. The difference lies in intent, awareness, and compassion. The future will test these principles. As artificial intelligence learns to mimic emotion and generate endless realities, we'll live in a world of competing fictions. Deepfakes, virtual influencers, AI companions, machines that lie persuasively because we taught them how. The question won't be, is it real? But does it help? The measure of truth may shift from factual accuracy to psychological utility. Maybe that's the next evolution of lying, moving from deceit to design. We'll build fictions consciously, not as traps but as tools, interactive myths that guide us through complexity. The world may become a tapestry of chosen illusions, each serving a purpose. And in that world, honesty won't mean stripping illusions away. It'll mean curating them wisely, choosing fictions that elevate, not degrade, living inside stories that make us more compassionate, not more certain, because the alternative, pure, brutal truth, is unlivable. The universe is indifferent. Life ends. Entropy wins. But between birth and death, we weave lies that turn dust into dreams. That's the magic. So yes, we lie, constantly, but maybe we do it because reality alone is too small for our imagination. Maybe lying is not our sin, but our superpower. If there's one thing that unites all human beings, it's that we are professional storytellers pretending not to be. The truth, if we can even use that word anymore, is that lying isn't a glitch in our nature, it's the operating system. We build families, governments, religions, and entire economies on carefully structured illusions. And while that sounds bleak, it's also strangely beautiful. Because without those illusions, we'd have nothing to hold on to. Let's start with the simplest example, yourself. The you sitting here, listening, thinking, remembering you're not a fixed truth. You're a story you tell yourself. A story made up of selective memory, flattering edits, and some stubborn denial. You remember victories more vividly than failures. You downplay regrets, exaggerate intentions, and smooth out the chaos of experience into a coherent narrative. That's not fraud, it's function. The self is a lie you need to stay sane. The neuroscientist Michael Gazzaniga once described the human mind as a storytelling machine. When the brain encounters gaps in logic, it invents explanations automatically. If one hemisphere of your brain sees something and the other doesn't, your mind will make up a reason. It would rather lie than admit confusion. The brain hates blank spaces. It will fill them, no matter how absurd the story. And that's what we've been doing as a species since day one, filling in the gaps. We lie to make chaos coherent. We lie to make randomness feel like destiny. We lie because the alternative meaninglessness is unbearable. Think about luck. When someone narrowly avoids disaster, they say, "It wasn't my time." When something terrible happens, they say, "Everything happens for a reason." Both statements are comforting lies. The universe doesn't schedule tragedies or blessings. But we tell ourselves it does because the illusion of order feels better than the truth of indifference. Even morality, our sense of good and evil, is a construction. We act as if right and wrong were carved into the fabric of the cosmos, but morality is a negotiation that changes with time and place. Ancient societies practiced slavery and called it natural. Today we call it abhorrent. One day, our descendants may say the same about things we consider normal. Morality evolves because it's built on human stories, not universal law. That doesn't make it meaningless, it makes it ours. Science is no exception. The great physicist Niels Bohr once said, "The opposite of a profound truth may be another profound truth." Quantum physics proves this daily. Light behaves as both a particle and a wave, depending on how you look at it. The universe itself lies. It says, "I am this," and then says, "Actually, I'm also that." Maybe that's the cosmic joke, we're living inside the most honest liar imaginable. But lying isn't just cosmic. It's deeply practical. Consider diplomacy. The world runs on polite fiction. No country tells another exactly what it thinks. Constructive dialogue means we're furious. Strategic alliance means we need you for now. International relations are choreographed deception. And yet, that dance keeps peace. Honesty would be chaos. Sometimes, lying is civilization. Even in art, truth hides behind performance. The musician doesn't sing the literal truth, they sing what truth feels like. The actor lies for a living, but their lie reveals something more authentic than confession. When a painter distorts perspective or a novelist invents a life, they're saying, "This didn't happen." But it's true. Fiction, paradoxically, is where truth gets to stretch its legs. The danger, of course, is when we stop realizing we're lying. When myth hardens into doctrine, when belief replaces curiosity, lying turns toxic. The moment you stop questioning your story starts owning you. That's how religions become crusades, how patriotism becomes nationalism, how love becomes possession. A lie is dangerous not because it's false, but because it forgets it's fiction. And yet, here's the strange part. We need that forgetting too. You can't live while constantly reminding yourself that everything's pretend. To function, you must believe in your own performance at least partly. The trick is to believe passionately but hold it lightly. That's what wisdom looks like, conviction with awareness. The great religions actually knew this. The mystics in every faith, Sufi poets, Zen monks, Christian contemplatives spoke of truth as paradox. They understood that ultimate reality can't be captured in words. Every doctrine is a metaphor, every scripture a kind of sacred fiction pointing beyond itself. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao, says Lao Tzu. The same could be said for any truth. The moment you speak it, you distort it. So maybe lying isn't the opposite of truth, it's the language truth uses to get our attention. Look around at human progress, and you'll see the fingerprints of imagination everywhere. We lied about flight, and then we flew. We lied about equality, and then we built democracies. We lied about immortality, and then we invented medicine. Every invention, every reform, every leap forward began with a sentence that wasn't true yet. The lie is the blueprint of the future, but let's not romanticize too much. Lying also builds prisons. When lies grow faster than empathy, they become tools of control. Propaganda, manipulation, conspiracy, they exploit our yearning for coherence. They give us villains and saviors, simplicity in place of nuance. The irony is, the bigger the lie, the easier it is to believe. Because large lies don't compete with truth, they replace it. They offer meaning where truth only offers complexity. The internet has made this epidemic global. The post-truth era isn't about ignorance. It's about saturation. There's too much information, too many truths, so we retreat to comforting fictions. Conspiracy theories thrive because they make chaos feel choreographed. Someone must be pulling the strings. The idea that no one is in control is far more terrifying, but maybe the real crisis isn't that we lie too much, it's that we've forgotten how to lie beautifully. Our lies have become clumsy, cynical, utilitarian. Once upon a time, we lied to create art, love, hope. Now, we lie for clicks, for money, for attention. The ancient storytellers would be horrified. That's why we crave authenticity again. Not because we expect the truth, but because we miss sincerity, the art of lying with heart. We want stories that admit their stories, honesty that includes a wink. That's why certain voices, writers, comedians, podcasters resonate. They don't promise pure truth. They promise awareness. Yes, I'm performing, but at least I know I'm performing. And maybe that's the closest we'll ever get to honesty in a species built on fiction. The truth is, we've never wanted pure honesty. What we've always wanted is meaning, and meaning always requires a little fiction. The myths of gods and heroes were early versions of self-help books. The stories of heaven and hell were motivational tools. Even the bedtime lies we tell children, that the world is fair, that kindness is always rewarded, are not meant to deceive, but to give shape to hope. Lying, in its highest form, is a form of care. It's how we protect each other from the coldness of truth. A doctor offering comfort to a terminal patient, a parent soothing a frightened child, a partner saying you'll be fine when neither knows. These are lies that love invents. They don't distort reality. They humanize it. The difference between manipulation and mercy lies not in accuracy, but in empathy. But it's a delicate balance. Too much illusion, and we lose grip on reality. Too much truth, and we lose the will to face it. The great task of being human is walking that tightrope between what is and what must be believed. Throughout history, the best leaders, artists, and teachers were the ones who understood this balance. They told stories that weren't factually true, but emotionally essential. Gandhi's vision of peace, Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream, Picasso's distorted faces, all were lies that revealed deeper truths. They didn't describe the world as it was. They described the world as it could be. And in doing so, they helped it become real. This is why the history of lying is also the history of progress. Every generation inherits the lies of the last and refines them. Some are discarded, others transformed. The lie that kings ruled by divine right became the lie that people rule themselves by virtue of democracy. The lie that the earth was the center of the universe became the lie that humans are insignificant specks. Both contain fragments of truth, and both shape how we live. We evolve not by replacing lies with truth, but by replacing bad lies with better ones. A lie that oppresses must die. A lie that uplifts may live until it, too, must be rewritten. That's why education matters. It's not just about facts. It's about teaching discernment. Knowing when a story serves life and when it strangles it. Lying, then, isn't something we outgrow. It's something we learn to do responsibly. It's like fire, dangerous, indispensable, and deeply human. So how do we live with that? Maybe by treating truth not as a weapon, but as a mirror that's always a little fogged. We wipe it clean now and then, but we never see it perfectly. That's okay. The blur is where empathy lives. Maybe honesty isn't about saying everything you think. Maybe it's about being sincere in your intentions, even when your words bend reality. The most trustworthy people aren't those who never lie, they're the ones who lie consciously, kindly, and never to dominate. In the end, the story of lying is the story of imagination. We're the only creatures who can imagine something that doesn't exist and then build it. The lie is the bridge between thought and creation. It's how we build cities, write novels, invent futures. Every skyscraper, every song, every movement began with someone saying, "This can be real," when it wasn't yet. Maybe that's the secret of our species. We're not truth seekers or liars. We're dreamers who blur the two. So the next time you catch yourself telling a story to someone else or to yourself, pause before you judge it. Ask, what purpose does this lie serve? Does it protect? Does it connect? Does it inspire? Or does it control? That's the moral compass of the modern age. Not truth versus falsehood, but compassion versus manipulation. The art of lying, when done right, isn't about hiding reality, it's about shaping it. And if you think that sounds like another lie, you're right. But maybe it's one worth believing, because at the end of the day, we're all unreliable narrators of our own lives, trying to make sense of chaos with stories that hold us together. The trick isn't to stop lying. It's to lie beautifully, consciously, and with love. So here's my final truth, or maybe my final lie. We lie because we care. We lie because we hope. We lie because reality, without imagination, is unlivable. And that's okay.